Welcome back. All right, so news of the day video quickly before hockey gets started again this afternoon. Third game getting started, two already done. The waiver wire, two players were waived yesterday. They were claimed today. Juolevi did not last that long in Florida. So as Florida needed to make room to bring up Spencer Knight, what this has done is caused them to have to waive somebody. So they waive Juolevi, and Detroit takes him. So here's to hoping that Juolevi is able to get into some games in Detroit. And that he has a good time there, and maybe gets a couple of points here and there. Ulevi's an interesting case where I understand like he'll always be associated with being that number 5 overall pick that never panned out for the Canucks. But Juho Lammikko, still not a number 5 draft pick, of course. Lammikko's been very good for the Canucks since they got him. So it's a trade that I guess the Canucks end up winning. I guess we can say that now. So, also on waivers, Czarnik is back in New York. Seattle waives him. The Islanders say, all right, we'll take him back. So, he's been reclaimed by the New York Islanders. We'll see whether or not he stays there, how long he stays there, and if he ends up going back on the waiver wire. Again, I've said this before. It feels like there's a lot of players now that are just moving back and forth on waivers. I kind of feel bad for them. But yeah, so Czarnik's back with the Islanders. Matt Dumba, activated from injured reserve for the Minnesota Wild. The Minnesota Wild, of course, are, kind of in free fall, so getting Dumba back on the blue line should help. Minnesota could very well be active at the trade deadline. We'll see what they do, because remember, next year, that penalty for Parise and Suter could absolutely kill their ability to have a competitive team under the cap. I understand why he did it, but man, that is going to be rough for them next year. So it might be in their best interest to get this all figured out this season and try to go on a run, because next year could be tougher. San Jose news, they've moved Dahlin to the IR. Rudolph Balcers is returning. Reimer has been put on the IR as well. He's listed as week to week. So this is why they picked up Stalock. They're short on goaltenders right now. So Reimer's going to be out for a while. Stalock's going to get into other games. Sachenko will get an opportunity to get a look, I'm sure. And so for San Jose, the season already looks like it's kind of slipped away. So we'll see what they have when it comes to their young goaltenders. Liam O'Brien, I haven't seen the term yet. Well, I've seen the term. The term's a 2-year extension with the Arizona Coyotes. I haven't seen how much it's going to be worth. Cap Friendly didn't have it listed yet at the time I put this together. It won't be a ton of money, but I like what Arizona's doing. So with the ASU moving to the Arizona State building for up to 4 years, I had to laugh yesterday watching the Arizona-Ottawa game, the TSN feed for it, and, them talking about whether or not it's long-term. And Gord Miller said, well, it's short-term, it's 4 years. And Mike Johnson's like, 4 years is forever, meaning for a hockey player, right? So getting guys signed who are willing to stick around and see this through is good, and especially before the deadline, right? So O'Brien, he signs an extension. He'll stick around with the team, you would think, into next year and beyond. And O'Brien's able to throw down, and he's also a decent bottom 6 option for them. Nathan Beaulieu, it's not seen as a day-to-day injury, so he may be out for a week or longer for the Winnipeg Jets. The Jets, of course, just getting healthier. So usually when a team has gotten back to health, somebody else will end up going out. So this time it's Beaulieu's turn to go on to the IR. He hasn't gone on the IR yet, but it's possible, especially if he's going to be out for a week and if they need the room. Anaheim news. GM Pat Verbeek would prefer to sign Hampus Lindholm. It's interesting because we're getting closer and closer to the deadline. I don't hear a lot about Lindholm as much as I hear about Sherratt. I'm not saying it's because he's a Montreal Canadian, but I'm not saying it's not because he's a Montreal Canadian. I think Hampus Lindholm's the biggest name on the market. Hampus Lindholm is a fantastic defenseman when he's on his game and plays in Anaheim, so I don't think people pay as much attention to him as they could. Lindholm can be a legit top 2 defenseman. At the very worst, he is a good top 4 defenseman, and he's not old either. So I agree with the idea that if you can keep him and sign him, that makes more sense. Now, of course, if they don't have him signed by the trade deadline, they may be forced to move him. But there's some debate about whether or not it's a seller's market or a buyer's market. There may be a lot of sellers, so that might make it easier for a buyer. Might be like, oh, well, we'd like to get Lindholm, but what do you want? We'll just go with Luke Shen out of Vancouver, that kind of thing, just using it as an example. So, yeah, We'll see if Lindholm signs and sticks around with the Ducks. I'd kind of like to see that happen, but again, it can be hard to predict that kind of thing. Cale Makar has reached an 11-game point streak with the assist in last night's game. Of course, Colorado ends up losing that game against Calgary, but it was a very good game. That game was just fantastic. And Makar, we're starting to see this three-headed monster atop the Norris Trophy race. I keep seeing Yossi, Hedman, and Makar, which means that Rangers fans will rage if that is the 1, 2, 3, because Adam Fox has had a very good year, arguably just as good this year as he was last year when he won the Norris. And then in the comment section below, there are plenty of other defensemen that I'm sure will get mentioned, because it's tough to pick the best defenseman in the league. It's kind of a weird thing. You have, let's see, 6. You have almost 200 defensemen in the NHL, including 7th defenseman and healthy scratches. It's over 200, and you got to pick one. Yeah, it is a tough call, and I've said in videos in the last couple of years, I think we might be looking at the best crop of defensemen we've ever had, where almost every team seems to have a really good defenseman that you could make a Norris argument for. Speaking of defensemen, not necessarily a Norris-level defenseman, but I like Ben Hutton. He signed a 2-year extension yesterday with the Vegas Golden Knights, announced as $850,000 per season. So, fair deal for Hutton, good deal for the Vegas Golden Knights, and again, signing a player, not having that uncertainty as you're going into the trade deadline makes sense. I think Hutton's played better for Vegas than he did in his previous couple of stops. So, yeah, I can see the point in them bringing him back and why he'd want to stay there, too. Interesting from last night's Hockey Night in Canada, in between periods, Elliot Friedman explaining that Montreal, while they're looking at possibly moving Sherratt, of course, there's Petrie rumors, Weber's contract may end up getting moved. The Montreal Canadiens could move that to a team that's looking to get to the cap floor. That's possible. Or a team looking for room on the LTIR, where they could just get his contract, throw it on the LTIR, and it's one of those things that the capologists get into with how much room that grants you, but it is possible he gets moved LTIR. I mean, yes, I would find it funny, too, if he went to Tampa on LTIR. I would find that humorous, but that's just me. So, yeah, that's what Elliot Friedman's reporting might be out there. His contract, that may get moved after the deadline. There's no rush. Shea Weber is very highly unlikely to ever play in the National Hockey League again. That was one thing that some people called BS on at the time. I remember saying, oh, he played in the final. There's no way his career's done. Yeah, it definitely looks like it's done. Vancouver Canucks, of course, they're in the news because they're 4 points back of a playoff spot. They've started climbing past some teams. It is going to be a tough road from here to get in. I know the record under Bruce Boudreau has been great, but it is going to be tough. They are assessing players' value. So apparently Jim Rutherford and others in the organization, they're looking at what the player's value is worth and whether it's better to trade said player or keep said player and re-sign them. And I'm glad that there's an organization doing this. I sometimes feel like the rush to move guys who are going to be UFAs can be, at certain teams, I think have maybe made a rash decision where they might have been better off just to keep the player, find a way to keep the player. Unless, of course, that player's made it clear he wants to test the market or he's wanting to move on. But I think sitting down with the players and discussing this and figuring it all out over the next 2 weeks is the perfect plan. And yeah, see what the value is on the market for those players, what teams are willing to give up in trade, and then see what the players who might be pending free agents want. Because if you're going to get back a 6th or a 7th round pick for a player who can play and who can be useful to you, you're probably better off holding on to that asset and re-signing him. So we'll see what the Canucks do. The deadline, again, 2 weeks from tomorrow. So it could very well be a busy deadline. I'm looking forward to it. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. If you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.